Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, ideas have an opportunity to transform, and stories have an opportunity to tell a lot of different things which are important in our lives. Welcome to Oratio Podium, where we are bringing in thought leaders and change makers to share their conversations around public speaking, debating, and oratory experiences. I'm Kaushik. I'm the host for this podcast, and I'm going to be bringing you comparing discussions with our guests around pioneering activities that they do in their world and how they have affected different changes in their own public speaking domains and how their experiences can shape you as a person who's beginning or as a person who has been in this domain for a while. With powerful ideas and personal journeys inspiring us, let's just begin to introduce our guest for today's episode. Anshuman here is an avid debater who has been debating for a very long time. He has taken part in a lot of international and national tournaments and also directed a lot of different tournaments to my knowledge. I've come across him doing his work for a very long period of time, and we had this encouraging discussion before the start of the podcast to have him on as a guest. And we are very glad that he accepted to be a part of this show as well. So, without any further ado, let's just go into our first section, and I won't be too glaring into how Anshuman has done stuff over the years so that he can also talk a bit about his experiences. So, let us just start by discussing a bit about your background and what you're doing currently so that we have a couple of things to identify you with and how you have sort of learned with your debating journey.
Yeah. So I think I just start from the beginning. I started from a small village in Odisha. We started learning from government schools, and debating wasn't a priority there. Honestly, any kind of speaking wasn't a priority there. Most of the parents or teachers, they just want you to learn stuff. They want you to score good and graduate out of that. And to my luck, which is not incredible, I managed to study in those government schools and colleges till end of my graduation, which was 2 years back, which meant that debating wasn't that important. To me, debating as an activity is a problem solving exercise. I see it a little differently. In my mind, I look at debating as a method of identifying issues around us and finding the best possible way to solve them. And that is what every debater should be doing as a part of any particular debate round. Specifically with my background, because I graduated in law from National Law Institute University Bhopal. I'm a lawyer, and whenever I looked at the world as a lawyer, I think I found my profession a little unfulfilling because more often than not, lawyers, people like us, we don't really bring any permanent solution, nothing to clear. And when I look at debating as an activity or the future of a debater or what debaters should aspire to be, a policy maker, some kind of person who is able to do surveys, figure out issues, and figure out ways to solve those problems. I think that's much more interesting to me. So, my interest in debating is not specifically as a co curricular activity, but mostly as an activity that I love pursuing and something that I enjoy. So, after my graduation, I decided to not take up a job and just involve myself in debating further because, well, this is something that I love. So, right now, I do a few things. One, I run uh, debating tournaments all across Asia. A few brands such as Indo-Pacific, which is quite popular now. People are participating, and it's doing well. Apart from that, I run UFD Education, where we try to teach very young kids from the age of 10 to 14 revolutionary ideas, where they are supposed to look at the world very critically, um, straying away from the existing education system. And we have seen amazing result with all of these kids doing incredibly well. So what I have seen is if we could steer the direction of education a little bit, where we can teach students how to apply their mind in terms of solving existing problems rather than simply looking at debating as an activity of pro and con and argument and rebuttal. I think there are actual advantages that people could derive. So that's a background of how I look at debating and how I'm involved in it.
A lot of interesting information that you portrayed there because for me also, I've been in the space to teach debating for a while. I've also graduated from law, so I can relate to you in a way. But there were a couple of interesting nuggets there which I really want to talk a bit more about because those would be very interesting for our listeners and viewers. Firstly, you mentioned something around the space of education in debating. and debating in education, if you might say so.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very relevant conversation as well, right? Because people often believe that debating is not really a important activity in schools, but from what I have learned from my students is that it's a very important skill that you develop and a very important thing that you need to portray to students to do, because then it makes them confident leaders as well as confident speakers in the future. And it just doesn't help them in debating but also helps them beyond debating. So I think that is something that I would very much enjoy you speaking a bit more about, and I think the listeners would also be very interested too. So why do you think that education should have more of debating? Because cognitive thinking does come at a young age and it becomes easier for you to cognitively develop at a younger age. So do you think it's an important thing for us to have in our curriculums?
So, independently, debating is not essential in a curriculum. However, we must look at the way our society is shaped. In the beginning, if you ask your parents a couple of questions, they get irritated and they ask you to shut up. You go into a school and you ask your teachers a question that is out of course, they would say, "This is out of course, you don't need to know about it." Generally, the teachers we are, and let's be very honest, we have private school teachers who never aspired to be private school teachers. These are people who wanted to be something else, and more often than not, teachers being becoming teachers is one of their last options. It's not their priority, which means the way our childhood is shaped, nobody is really interested in making us critical about the society, making us think about the society in a productive manner, or probably make decisions. Now, what is the result of that? You look at it and you see, okay, so generally speaking, the decisions that you see from students are ones which are quite self-destructive, and this is quite evident. I'll tell you why. Over last 20 years, students have been opting into fields which are the most competitive in nature, with the least chance of success, with the least possible salary. And this is a trend that you see everywhere. People want to be doctors, people want to be engineers, where there is no promise of a very high salary, but competitiveness is way too high. And if you look at it, mathematically, it doesn't make sense to go into a profession where probability of outcome is so low. However, people still opt into it. That is not the only decision. Teenagers, more often than not, are forced to smoke, drink, do anything else, not because they consent to it or because they enjoy it, but because of peer pressure. More often than not, a lot of people aren't able to make simple decisions. And this is the example I give my all my students the first time I meet them. Let's say you are walking down a road and it's a little slippery and you slipped and somehow you were able to save yourself. So I think that the general method of teaching and learning in the society we live is mostly through theoretical understanding. Normally, nobody would allow you to ask questions, which would include your parents, teachers, everyone else, which means that more often than not, we are influenced by people around us and we tend to make really bad decisions. One of the key examples that I share with all my students is that whenever you are, let's say, going on a road and there's a lot of water and you slide, what is your first reaction? Because if your first reaction is, "Oh my God, how many people saw me? This is so embarrassing," uh, you are you have some kind of an issue, because more often than not, you derive all of your happiness from external validation, and you are so scared that it would go away. But there are a second kind of people as well who would say, "Oh my God, I did not fall down. This is so nice," where they are deriving all their validation and happiness from within. I think this is the problem with most individuals in the society, where they suffer from decision making and general understanding of happiness and what's important in life. So I would just say, apart from education, in your formative years, specifically till the age of 18, where people are constantly trying to find answers for everything, it's very important that they have a logical standpoint towards everything, so that they could, by reason, understand what's important and what is not, which would help them a lot, uh, probably make very good academic decisions for themselves. Like, think about it, if they could weigh short term and long term influences their decisions would have, wouldn't they have better futures rather than, "Well, my friend asked me to mass bunk, let's do it." So I think generally they would have better decision making at the point when they do this. But more importantly, I think all of them would just be better individuals. But I also think it has an effect on the curriculum. Our curriculum is way too theoretical. Like, think about it. The only thing people learn in history is when did Akbar come, which wars did he win, okay, and when did he die, who came next. While these kids learn about momentum and acceleration in physics, they can't cross a road comfortably. When you are crossing a road, there is a car coming, it has acceleration and momentum. They know how to calculate it on paper, but they don't have the practical skills to do anything. There are issues around them at all points of time. These are kids who would not know how to get any information from a government agency. Most of them would not know how to book a train ticket. I just think at the point when they are exposed to debating as an activity, where they are supposed to supply a lot of the ideas they have with reason and practical experiences, they get better at living in the world. They would form better relationships around them. And I think they would deal with their parents, teachers, and everything else much, much better. And this is something that I have said more often than not. We spend 20 years of our life studying 14 hours a day to maintain an amazing professional life, and we still fail. But we never put any work whatsoever to find out a good personal life for us. That is, in these 20 years, we do absolutely nothing to make our personal life better. Assuming you go to work 8 hours a day or even 12 hours a day, let's say you are an IT employee, still half of your day is your personal life. I think education is not only supposed to teach us how to be a good professional, it is supposed to teach us how to be a productive person in the society, how to be a good person. I think education currently is leaving out those 12 hours of personal life, personal decision making, your own approach towards the world and how you behave with other people. I think at the point when people debate, in its essence, not in terms of only public speaking, if people debate with reason, if people debate with understanding, they get better at all of this, which I think is very important. Till the age of 20, I believe that your professional decision making is likely to be guided by a lot of people. You will get a lot of help, but your personal decision making suffers from the worst kind of manipulation, influence that you have around you. And that is the time where you are supposed to apply reason rather than simply doing what you are supposed to do.
Definitely. So I think reasons do help a lot in terms of the decision making and the factor about how logic helps you do daily tasks and other activities better as well. I think those are interesting takes. But let's just go back a bit into how you began your journey so that we can also have some tidbits from there. So if you say that there was some people early on which influenced your journey in debating, or you would say that there are any noteworthy moments in debating that you had, what would you say they were so that we can also sort of get some ideas as to how to make our journeys better?
I won't say I had a very good start to debating. Like, I was from a government school, never learned English. At best, I knew some Hindi, and I entered NLIU Bhopal for my graduation at the age of 19. And the first time I spoke, it was really funny. I couldn't complete sentences. I don't think my debating journey was as smooth as it was supposed to be. More often than not, I think uh, I did not have the confidence to be a good debater. What I had, however, is a lot of overconfidence in myself. So I had this capacity to say everyone else is wrong but me, which a lot of people would say is stupid. But whenever I lost, somehow I did not assign blame on myself, and I tend to assign other people, not really confronting them. But I was like, probably the judge did not understand me. It's okay, it's not my fault. And I think it's not the best quality to have. But as a debater, let me tell you, when you go into a tournament, you fail several times, regardless of how good of a debater you are. There is no age limitation in debating. Like people like me, who have debated for 7 years and currently are teaching debating, would come and debate against you. Okay. And people, I think in international circuit, 35-year-old debaters who have 15 WDC break would come and debate against you. You are going to lose terribly. And I don't think people are made to tolerate those kind of losses. In every other activity, you get a consolation. You go to a MUN, you get a special mention. Here, you get absolutely nothing, which means that in order to debate in long term, you need to assign blame on somebody else. You need to
think of yourself as an individual who is doing nothing wrong. Surely there is scope for improvement, and this is what happened with me. I lost 7 tournaments back to back, did not break, did really badly. This was 2019, 2020. And all the time, all my friends, all my teammates, they all left debating. After, like, in those 7 losses, I think I had about 12 teammates, all of whom left debating after that period, and I was the only one left. So the way I would characterize my debate journey is, I was not even the better ones. Like, I was not amongst the better ones. I was the person who lasted very long, and therefore, because I participated way too much, I became better and better on a daily basis. I don't do spar, I don't watch debate videos, I have never taken debate coaching. I did not even consult seniors. I was a pure introvert. So even now, even if a lot of people in the circuit know me, I can't really go and talk to them. So generally, none of that worked for me. What worked for me was doing it consistently over and over. And lockdown was amazing because it started online debating. So over that 2 years, I'm sure I did 300 tournaments, judging, speaking combined. So I debated way too much, which meant that I got better. I don't think this is a relatable experience for people because most debaters have some set of skills starting out, and that's really helpful for them. I just think when you do something over a long period of time, every weekend, you just get better at it without any help, without any necessary intervention whatsoever. So for me, it was mostly doing it over a long period of time. But what I teach my students, however, when they want to get better at debating very quickly, is the basic problem solving method I talked about. In every debate, you must solve a problem. If you solve a problem, the judges would be very happy and everyone would be happy, and they would see you as an optimistic debater who is able to argue something that's actually productive, who is not only arguing merits and demerits of existing policies, but is probably able to propose how existing policies or alternative policies would solve the problem better than the existing one. So I think just focusing on problem solving is one of the key ways to win and do well at debating.
Oh, that's perfect because I think from my own experiences, lockdown really propelled me into being a better debater and then changed my trajectory in debating as well. So I can sort of relate because even in NLU, when I was a student, I had a lot of problems discussing things with my seniors. And to be very honest, none of them were really into debating. People usually wanted to only do moot courts, and everything around moot courts was something that was the fad at that point of time. So that didn't really help me a lot. But then again, you do see these people transitioning out of debating with all these losses, so you do need to have a very very strong mentality so that you can stick around and do it for a long time. But that was very insightful. So I think in this next segment we can sort of have a discussion around how we operate as individuals in the society and how debating sort of affects us as well. Because for example, debate has a lot of different things that has led it me to change, and that also has led me to do teaching and other ventures in terms of courses and other management. And I see that that's the same with you as well, that you've gone into education, you've done a lot of various things in debating that has not really traditionally been tournaments. So this is also relevant in a broader societal perspective. So as a thing that we discussed at the beginning of the podcast as well, just continuing on from there, if you think that we have, say, potential to change something in the debating world or in the debating circuit, what would be something that you find most relevant as an issue that you would want to deal with? And how do you think that this debating space could be made more inclusive, more safe, or any way better than what it is today?
I would just say debating is way too competitive. It's a problem, and I will tell you why. People have to spend a lot of money to debate, and more often than not, when people are starting out, these are not individuals who are enlightened. These are individuals who still depend upon some kind of validation in order to do well in life. The problem with the debating space, apart from everything else, is their tendency to make it way too competitive. Look at every tournament around us, and I have done a few tournaments recently. One of the things that they focus most upon is to make sure that less than 20% of people are qualifying into elimination rounds, okay, just to make sure that the tournament is seen as a highly competitive tournament. And this is true for each and every tournament that happens in India and abroad. I don't think people have a problem spending money on debating because they spend money on a lot of other things. People have a problem because when they spend money on debating, they get absolutely no utility because they lose day in and day out. In comparison to spending money on other things where they get some form of validation, some form of happiness, some form of, like, I would say, gestures that make them feel comfortable. I think one of the primary changes that tournaments need to do is make them easier to break into. So rather than having a 20% category, like 20% break category, where only 20 out of 100 people are going into semi or quarterfinals, I think what they could have is create more and more categories. So open categories, novice categories, school categories. Okay, probably make the novice category a little bigger because these are novices who have just spent 10,000 rupees to come and debate in your tournament, and they should get some encouragement whatsoever, which I think is really necessary. And people don't talk about it a lot. Like, people talk about accessibility, make tournaments cheaper. It is never going to be cheap. Like, if you travel from Delhi to Mumbai, it's not going to be cheap for you. Online debating is helpful, but is still expensive enough to deter individuals from pursuing this activity as long as likelihood of success goes down. So one of the first things that people need to do is make sure that more often than not, people who are entering the activity are rewarded because it's a lot of hard work and they deserve that kind of reward. Secondly, I think debate education in and of itself is in a really bad state. And I have seen a lot of workshops recently just to analyze the way education is done. And they teach you format, they teach you structure, and they teach you exactly what you are supposed to do to win. This seems very much like school education, where they teach you whatever you are supposed to do to get good marks. Nobody knows what exactly the purpose behind you debating. Like, okay, you become confident, but is there a internal purpose to it? What are you supposed to do with your debating ability? How are you supposed to think? Because, well, as a prime minister, you are supposed to do these things. As a deputy prime minister, you are supposed to rebut, extend, compare. But is there a way of thinking that you should adopt? And I promise you, I have seen multiple national teams which are being coached right now. I have interacted with a lot of coaches. I have interacted with multiple other educators who have been in the debating space for last 40, 50 years, specifically in Hong Kong, Korea. And one thing in common with all of their curriculum is that it is created to make sure people win in the shortest time period possible, which I think is stupid. More often than not, doesn't help people. I understand when people are doing it for CV benefits, but I think there is a larger category of individuals who want to opt into debating for some kind of personal growth. So, education in debating should focus on shaping the way people think rather than focusing upon teaching them or fast tracking them with formats or lessons through which they can win. I think it's a wrong approach in and of itself. Debaters who claim that they are different and they are doing something new, it's co curricular, cannot opt into the same academic thinking that we had in schools. It's wrong. Almost all debating societies do it. They must change it. I don't know how, but they must change it if they want to become better debating societies, if they want to help their students. And this is something that they must do.
Definitely. I think one of the larger things that came around from that conversation was also that since the world has become so hyper competitive, it's also very important that people are sort of doing this for some personal gain. I've seen students do this to improve their college applications abroad and in India specifically, and maybe in some other countries also. I'm not that confident in saying so. But I think that has led to a lot of first heartache for these students in the first place, but also a lot of problems that have happened in general for the people who are approaching this activity. But then again, if you do not short sell them a win, it's harder for you to become more, say, approachable as a educator as well. I think that becomes an entire dichotomy that you need to sort of address.
That you can very easily solve by making tournaments less competitive. and and then you can try to teach them better and then make tournaments less competitive, so even when they are learning the right way, they are still able to get achievements. I think both things have to go together, and if they happen, it would create a very good atmosphere. But currently, I think yes, um, teachers, educators are also forced to supply some kind of achievements which they have to.
Yeah, because I think the entire ecosystem is in and of itself becoming a bit more toxic than it really needs to be. For me, also personally, I think a lot of things that I've experienced due to debate has not always been the most positive, because people become being so hyper competitive means that they have some agenda or some issue with others being good rather than learning from them. And then learning from others would have involved you becoming better yourself. And that is not something that is a perspective that people have. But that also brings around another important thing, right? When you're coming to tournaments and you have these interactions with people, do you think it's important that people do participate in these tournaments so that they can gain those experiences? Because when we're talking about access, we do understand that access is an issue, but do you think that increasing access and all would inherently improve the debating atmosphere? Because then that they'll have more chances to do so, but then also they'll have more chances to become better debaters, which would involve them becoming easier to approach different tournaments much more positively.
I think access is solved by the online atmosphere in totality. I mean, you can now participate in elite university competitions online at a very low cost, which I think solves the access issue. I just think that tournament experience in and of itself is not very nice. I know for a lot of people they get to meet their friends and which is good. But think of it from a novice debater's perspective. This is a person who has gone to a tournament and is losing every round. And while people are giving him feedback, he doesn't know when is he going to improve. Okay. And he doesn't necessarily know what is he going to take away from. We must think of this as from a business point of view. Let's say you are providing a service. Okay. You have to make sure that the customer you have has the best possible first impression, so that he comes back, so that you are able to retain the customer, right? So let's say creating a tournament is like providing a service. In this situation, you want to make sure that your service is perfect, which means you want to run the tournament on time. You want to make sure that adjudicators are giving good feedback. You want to make sure that every room has a good runner, or probably there is some form of reward at the end, and people generally have a very good experience. Which means, let's say between the two rounds, uh, after round one, before round two, why don't we spare 15 minutes to discuss the motion by the CAP? I think that would be much rewarding if the CAP could come and discuss every round's motion after the round is over. I'll tell you why they can't do it. It is because tournaments have absolutely no discipline. What happens is, let's say I'm a very reputed debater, okay? What I will do is, the round one is supposed to start at 10 a.m. I would reach at 11 a.m. And because I'm reputed, they won't be able to start the round without me. This also happens because the chief adjudicators are late all the time. Tournaments has absolutely no power to hold these people accountable, which means the tournament is going to run late because of a few individuals like me and some others. While the novice debaters who have just started out are having their first tournament experience, where rounds are starting very late and rounds are ending at 11 p.m. in the night, and everything is just really uncomfortable. I'm telling you, with that kind of discomfort, nobody is going to have a learning experience. Tournament organizers must look at debate tournament as a kind of service they are selling, where they want to retain the existing customers. If they don't do that, then the entire thing becomes an uncomfortable atmosphere for everyone who is novice. I have a lot of students. I take them to Indian university tournaments, and they generally don't like it at all because of the delays, because of the way the tournament is run. Who are the CAs interacting with? The CAs are never interacting with novice debaters. They generally interact with their friends or existing reputed debaters who don't need it much. Let's say I am a CA, I'm very reputed, and I see a group of people who are novice sitting in the auditorium who are sad. Don't you think I should interact with them? Or probably after every round for 15 minutes, you make it compulsory for the CAs to interact with the novices and probably tell them what the motion was about, so that they can take a learning experience from it. There are a lot of things that could be done to make these tournaments enjoyable and a better learning experience for people. I just think it's unlikely to happen unless the tournament organizers take some accountability to make it so.
I think, very realistically speaking, also when university tournaments are being talked about, they jam pack the schedule in 2 days, so it becomes really hard for them to manage, and then these sort of delays keep compounding because once you've started out late, you keep going on
No, they can easily
later.
handle it. I'll tell you why. They can do four in rounds rather than five. Then, rather than having a quarter-final, semi-final, and final, they can copy the European circuit and have gold final, silver final, bronze final, novice final. Four finals at the same time. It will make the schedule very relaxed. It's not a new suggestion. This suggestion has been given multiple times. The problem is, whoever is the debating society president this year would not remain the president next year. So, whatever suggestions they got, they cannot implement it next year. There's a new president, there's an entirely new debating society. The way tournaments are organized isn't really nice. There isn't a single experienced orcom. Whichever orcom organized the tournament this year, they would be dismissed. They would go out of the college by next year, and you would have an entirely new orcom making the exactly same mistakes. There are ways to make everything better. I just think that there is a lack of willingness to work towards it.
Yeah, I think documentation and also streamlining the process and training people who are coming in to replace you helps a lot. But I think that is also something which is not incentive driven for people, so they don't really do it. Why would you really be incentive driven to teach an outgoing president what to do?
No, that's why I
That's not
think
something.
that's why I think tournaments should be profit making in nature. Whenever tournaments are happening, the ORCOM should earn a part of the profits, or probably the administrative body of your college should earn a part of your profit. And it is very easy. Don't invite foreign CAs, reduce your expenditure, invite IAs and SAs from locality, like not from very far away. Don't promise them extravagant things. Reduce your prize pool, okay? Because most of the novice debaters are never going to see that prize pool anyways, okay? Reduce your prize pool and make sure you have a profit, because that profit allows administrative bodies to allow more debating tournaments to happen. Like, think of it. You go to the NLEO admin and you promise them, I would make 2 lakhs in profit from this tournament. Why would they stop you? They would never stop you. They would do everything on time. The problem is, currently you are going to the administrative body and saying you need to invest 4 lakhs in this tournament, which I think is a bit problematic. There is a clear path to profitability in every tournament. And say what you do want about capitalism. When there is profit, people tend to be more efficient, people provide better services, and with the current rich fee, without increasing it, there is a clear way to profitability, which I think tournaments can take. It's just that it's too much to think. I think a lot of people are just not committed. They can do all of this.
Change is a scary thing at the end of the day for people, right? So people don't really want to go against what is the norm because they're comfortable sitting where they are. So regardless, I think even when you talk about circuits like East India, I think it's a very underdeveloped circuit because North India has this high concentration of tournaments because there are a lot of concentration of colleges which have a rich heritage of debating. So I think there is a lot of problems in that sense as well because people in East India don't really have access to good resources like a good judge pool or a good number of speakers to actually have registers for tournament, and this happens in other circuits as well. Do you think this is something that can be alleviated at any point of time, or what do you think should be solutions for this?
I don't think the East Indian circuit is going to get better anytime soon. It's because, let's say, there is a good debater from Odisha or West Bengal. It's likely that they would move to Delhi, Mumbai, or Bangalore for either college or for their job. So, given good debaters are unlikely to stay in their own states, how would they come and serve as a judge? And if you call a judge from Bangalore, you are going to have to spend 25,000 just to call a judge, which I think is way too much of an expense. So these debating circuits could only flourish through the medium of online debating. I don't think offline debating is going to be that comfortable. Only a few institutions which have institutional funding. For example, I think in West Bengal, it's St. Xavier's, NUJS. Then you have CNLU in Bihar, NLU in Odisha, IIT Guwahati in Assam. These are only a few institutions who have the kind of resources to pull something off. I don't think there is a possibility of good debating or generally good competitive debating happening in these areas. None of these tournaments are known for their competitive behavior. And I have been to many of these tournaments where the admin has poured lakhs of rupees to make these tournaments happen. Otherwise, they won't happen. So, for example, I went to CNLU, IIT Guwahati. These are tournaments where the admin spends a lot of money because it somehow brings reputation to them. So, I don't think there is a way to make these things better. Can they look for sponsorships? Yes. There is a big market for sponsorships in the East. Are students in their second year of law or any kind of courses capable and equipped of looking for sponsorships? The answer is no. So one solution is, which I have always suggested, hire a tournament director. Let's say you want to have 5 CAs in a tournament, cut one of them, uh, get 4 CAs and hire a very experienced tournament director who has been directing tournaments for last 5 6 years. There are a lot of such individuals that I know, specifically from the DU circuit, from GLC, IIT Bombay. These are tournaments that occur all the time. They get sponsorships all the time. So if you hire one tournament director rather than hiring one CA, probably they would be able to figure out a way to get sponsorships and make the tournament financially lucrative enough to work out. But I don't think it will make a huge change. It's likely that debating forever in upcoming 20, 30 years at least, until the glaciers melt and half of India drowns, it's likely that it would be concentrated in Mumbai and Delhi and Bangalore.
And it's a very regrettable thing as well, because I think there's a lot of potential there, which is an unexploited market in the
Yeah,
sense of
think
how
about
people
it.
approach it.
All good debaters currently in the Indian circuit are from this area. Like I know so many ODI debaters who never represent a ODI institution in their life because they just go to Delhi or Mumbai. I mean, a lot of the DU debaters right now, a couple of DTU debaters, a couple of SRCC debaters, all of them are ODI, and they are the top debaters in India right now, which seems a little unfair. Like these are people who are supposed to represent their state and probably educate people around them. But because all education centers, all good colleges are concentrated in Delhi or in Bangalore or in Mumbai, it's likely that even if we have the talent, people would never make it, or probably the region would never really benefit from it.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think me being a part of NLU, I faced a lot of challenges in my couple of years going to circuits, because I can't travel to Delhi every week to do a tournament, right? Because only if COVID happened, that's the only reason I became as good as I did and I became capable of doing what I did. So COVID was some sort of a blessing for East India, probably in the sense that it allowed a lot of access. I do not really wish to say so because of the suffering and all the problems that COVID caused, but it's regrettable that it had to come to it to actually make any sort of tangible change. But let's see, in the future, hopefully there will be more direction towards this dialogue and there would be some chances for us to improve the situation. There are, of course, different methods, as you explained. You can do online tournaments here, you can involve sponsorships, but as you mentioned as well, college students are really ill equipped to handle sponsorships. And tournament directors are also, as I said, very much so centric in Delhi and Mumbai, and they're very regrettably not always going to come to your country and your state. Also, if they're good, say if they're from abroad, they won't come there. But even if they're from some other state, they really don't find any incentive to come to a circuit which is so underdeveloped that it's very hard to deal with sponsorships and other things that come around with it. But just towards like the end of the entire program, let's just come back and sort of think a bit about what other things that you would say a debater should do. Suppose if there's a novice who is, say, going through a very important segue of their journey in terms of improving, let it be, say, a school child or say a child from the first or second year in university in and of itself. So if this uni debater or this school debater wants to improve, apart from the things that you mentioned, like for instance you said that they could do things which would look good to the judge, do you think it's very realistic for them to improve by doing things like, say, appreciating other works and doing some sort of training modules? What do you think would improve them better in their journey?
I mean, there is a very fast way to improve in debating. Whenever you are debating in your prep time, you need to ask four very simple questions. Okay. See, most of the debates are seen as THBT or THW. The government should do something, or an institution should do something. Okay. Why is anyone doing anything? There must be a problem in the society that they are trying to solve. So the first question you are supposed to ask is, what is that problem that everyone is trying
Yeah.
to solve in this debate? Explain what that problem is. Under that, you should explain. Uh, what is the long term effect of this problem, and you must explain that in long term it is going to destroy the society somehow. What are the short term effects of the problem, and who are the stakeholders who are being affected by the problem? After which, you are going to explain why the problem has not been solved yet. So, the only reason we are discussing a policy is because other policies did not solve it. So, very quickly, why the problem has not been solved yet. And then you are supposed to explain why is your solution better than the existing solutions. Under that, why would your solution work? One, by saying that people who are going to implement this solution are competent and they have the capacity to implement it, and then saying they have the incentive to implement in the best possible way. Then you are supposed to do impacting, where you are supposed to argue three levels of impacts. One, what is the direct impact on the most proximate stakeholders? That is, who are the people directly affected by this and how are they affected? Let's say a factory is going to close, the laborers are affected, right? So they are the direct stakeholders. Second, what is the larger impact on society or nation? If a lot of factories close, there would be lesser competitors, prices are going to grow, consumers would suffer, economy would suffer, whatever. And lastly, what is the messaging impact? What kind of message is it going to send? Who are those people who are going to receive this message? And what is the harm or benefit they would suffer? This is the easiest way to improve. What you are supposed to do is write down these 5 questions and the sub questions on a Google Doc. Whenever you get a motion, rather than writing your speech from scratch, fill out the answers to these questions. Okay, and you can go in the round and you can say, and this is a very good structure, you can say, Judge, I would answer 5 questions for you. Question one, read the question, read the answer. It's totally okay. Like, don't read it, but you can just read the question and give the answer. Question two, question three. Do the same things over and over again. I think you would improve in a very short period of time, and you would find it very easy to improve. I know there are a lot of modules about how to do characterization, yada, yada, yada. I don't think that helps a normal person. Normal person like me, we are not intelligent individuals. Okay. We are individuals who are average, who have seen average education. And for people who are average, people who aren't extremely intelligent, they must follow a very uniform method to get better very quickly. So frame 5 questions in every debate. You must answer those exact 5 questions, and you have to make sure those questions are answered in detail. And over 3 to 4 months, you would get significantly better. Similarly, if you are on the opposition, why is this policy not needed? Why is this policy not important? Why are there existing better policies, or why there could be better policies? Who are the stakeholders? Why are they harmed? What is the comparison? Very basic questions. You write them down and you answer them chronologically, uniformly. This is the first question. It has to have the first answer in your speech. See, this is important. This sounds a little mechanical. I understand that. But a little mechanics is the way to improve very quickly. You can't be a free flowing debater within 6 months. For that, you need not a lot of knowledge. I don't think anybody is reading Socrates, Aristotle well these days. I don't think anybody is reading philosophy. And debating as at its core is philosophy. I don't think anybody can improve as a thinker in 3 to 6 months. If they want to improve as a debater and get achievements, this is the roadmap. You take 5 questions, you answer them again and again and again. And I think in 2 to 3 tournaments, you get better to break. You would reach semifinals, you would win some prize money that would compensate for your debate trip. So you would be able to go for more debate tournaments. So this is short term. I think if you do it over 4 to 5 years and keep reading, I don't like to read. I hate books. So watch YouTube, watch anything, like listen to podcasts, whatever. But you keep educating yourself bit by bit. For me, most of my education has come from all the shows. Okay, so Netflix, Prime, Hotstar. I watch all of them regularly on a daily basis. And while people say they are distractions, I derive most of my knowledge from them. So they are entertaining, and if you choose the right shows, they give you a lot of knowledge. I think that's really good. So these are all options through which you derive knowledge, and over 5 to 6 years, you become a very capable thinker. And people really don't appreciate how important that is. Like, Currently, a lot of the decisions you are going to make in your 20s is going to affect your entire life. You make one wrong decision, and probably you would end up in a place that you did not aim to end up in. I think being a good thinker, improving as a debater in long term is exactly what you need to make sure you get through your 20s without making stupid decisions which would lead you to bad places. That is the phase where debating can become extremely important, which I think people would achieve if they just keep doing it in long term. That would come from some kind of initial success that you achieve through the very basic format that you are going to follow.
So, what would be, just wrapping up the conversation, what would be the final thought that you would have as you're leaving the viewers here?
I would say that debating is a competitive activity and it's fine to look at it that way. But there is scope, and probably it's better to look at debating as an enriching activity. Don't look at it as an academic form or participation to increase your intellect. Probably debating as a method is supposed to enrich your soul in certain ways. It is also supposed to help you grow as a person. I think by being a debater, I have become a better person overall. I think I treated people worse when I was not a debater in comparison to how I treat people now. I think I have better relationships with people around me, with my parents, with everyone else, in comparison to what I was before I was a debater. I think debating is also a journey of self growth, and it's a very underrated concept. But when you are debating, I would say also try to focus upon what kind of person you are. I know we keep a diary of what are the wins and losses we had, and how many rounds we won, and what was our speaker scores. At least people have tabs and people keep looking at it. I think there is a point to keeping score of what kind of person are you becoming on a daily basis. Uh, I think debating helps, but I don't know if it would help everyone. But I think there's a point of keeping score. Please evaluate yourself every quarter. Have a quarterly meeting with yourself and see how you have done as a person. And it has absolutely no benefit in the short term, but it does make sense over 5 6 years when you tend to be happier, you tend to have more satisfaction, more fulfillment, all of which I think is much more necessary than money, power, career, because that's exactly what you are aiming to achieve through all those mediums. So yeah, just do that.
That's perfect. I guess I think you do change a lot as a debater in the terms that you are, say, thinking about different things. Logically, you're becoming better, you're engaging with people better. So I think it becomes a very enriching exercise and an activity for you to develop yourself and also develop your relationships around you. And it's very easy also to go askew. So it's also something that you have to be careful about by thinking positively and doing the right steps. And of course, in 20s, if you make a misstep, it's a really dangerous situation to be in. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of different things people did get out of this. I think people do understand that there are a lot of scopes and potentials for debating to become game changers, and I think a lot of our listeners would be very happy going through this episode and listening to what you have been speaking about, and it's been very insightful. Thank you so much for being a part of this. We hope that we can have you on board again pretty soon.